actually people are going to walk across.
Yeah, but that'll happen to everybody, wouldn't it? Wherever you
Yeah,
go.
but hang on.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Autosport. We're just outside the paddock where we've witnessed today the Japanese Grand Prix 2025 won by Max Verstappen. Fantastic drive. Let's start with him. We said here yesterday we were a bit unsure whether he'd be able to hang on, having qualified ahead of the two McLarens, thinking they were quicker, but hang on he did, JBL.
He did. A spectacular race from his perspective, at least. From a spectacle-wise, maybe not. But he managed everything perfectly. This was a real Max Verstappen win, very much compared to what he did in 2023. So managed to lead the field away. That's what he needed to do. That's what he did. And then it was just all about keeping the two McLarens behind. It did help that degradation was very, very low. And as we know, McLaren's strength is in managing its tyre degradation. So this was something that Verstappen didn't need to worry about. He didn't need to worry about the McLarens coming back at him at the end of the stint because he had it well managed. I think towards the end of the first stint, Norris had managed to cut a 2-second gap into about 1.4, 1.5. But this still wasn't enough to really put Verstappen under any pressure. The DRS zone wasn't closing. Verstappen could manage each of the ends of the two stints, and so it was just essentially just a perfect win. Didn't really need to fight them off at any point, just had everything really well managed.
I guess one of the questions a lot of people are asking is, McLaren strategy wise, would Max have been fighting off Piastri if they'd have let him pass Max? Where do you stand on that? I don't think so. I think it's easy to sit third and go, actually let me pass and I'll have a go at him, but he'd have encountered exactly the same issues that Norris was having, right?
Well, I think there's twofold arguments here, which is, could McLaren have got an undercut from pitting Norris basically on the lap they pitted Piastri? And I think that's a possibility. If we take the two stops that they had, Verstappen's stop was a second slower. The delta between the medium tyres at the end of that stint and hard tyres at the start of that stint was about, I think for both Norris and Piastri, 0.4 seconds. So that's a 1.4 second gain theoretically if they'd gone a stop a lap earlier. So I don't think that it's outside the bounds of possibility, but ultimately that didn't happen. Then you had the sort of contretemps at the pit lane exit. Again, Norris could have just maybe lifted off there and he would have not lost the extra second and a half that he did lose. And then there is, could Piastri have had a go? Would he have encountered the same issue? Again, potentially. It's ifs and buts. It's really hard to say, but I do think Piastri had more pace at that point in the race. So you might put Verstappen under a little bit more scrutiny, but again, we are speculating.
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all be diabetic. Overtaking, we mentioned it there. There was an issue today. We had a few issues in China with it. I was in Fred Vasseurs' session. He basically was asked, are we in danger of this almost becoming a qualifying world championship, in the sense that what happens on a Saturday is what's going to dictate what happens on a Sunday? We see it in Monaco all the time, I know, but we're seeing it here. Monaco this year, they're addressing it with the two stops. But could that become an issue, do you think, or will it be track dependent?
I think it didn't help in this Grand Prix that degradation was so low. You needed probably a 0.5, 0.6 second delta per lap to make an overtake with DRS. There is only one DRS zone as well, so that made it a little bit more difficult. And this track is difficult to overtake on anyway because the track's so narrow. You don't have many hard stops, so it's difficult to get the slipstream and get the side by side. And these cars are at a point now where we're 4 years into this regulatory cycle.
Yeah.
They're very far away from what the intention was with making the cars, making it easier to overtake with the cars. They're generating a lot more dirty air. So that means you're a little bit more dependent on having the straights to do it, having the hard stops to make those overtakes. You can't really do that here at Suzuka, so it's just simply more difficult anyway. But we're in a position now where it is generally harder, I think.
So, relatively boring race, but the other thing I've written on my notebook to talk about, it just says rookies. Now, we had 3 in the top 10 that around here, that regardless of overtaking, regardless of anything else you want to say, to have 3 rookies in the top 10 at a track notoriously difficult to get to grips with, that's very impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely is. When you look at how Ollie Behrman got on through the race, qualifying was super impressive, and then bringing the car through the race and keeping 10th place, that was super impressive from him.
Hadjar only lost out to Lewis Hamilton, and that was, I think, maybe because Hamilton had done that contra strategy, which didn't work out to get him any higher up. But that would have been his initial target, would have been to get ahead of the Racing Bull, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think Hamilton was a little bit out of position, whereas Hadjar sort of was as well, but he was very impressive in qualifying. But towards the end of that stint, Hamilton just had a little bit more tyre life and therefore had the pace. And Kimi Antonelli as well.
I was very impressed with Kimi today. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't. I think there was maybe one mistake at the chicane, but that was it. And by the end of the race, he was 1.3 seconds behind George Russell.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, Russell was sort of being held up a little bit by Charles Leclerc, but super impressive performance at a circuit that he could have got experience on earlier this year, but he didn't. He wasn't able to do it. He was supposed to do a Super Formula test. He couldn't do that because he was unwell after the Abu Dhabi end of season test. So actually, funny story, I was at Mercedes a little bit earlier because their head of communications, Bradley Lord, was basically giving us a briefing of the race weekend. And he said, actually, because Kimi didn't have the experience, Valtteri Bottas has been a real asset in guiding him through the weekend and helping him get a little bit more experience of what to expect with the circuit, and helped him out of didn't lead him out of a difficult situation earlier this weekend single-handedly, but helped Antonelli just kind of work through the setup difficulties that he was having in practice, and that culminated in him getting a really good result.
Let's give him driver of the day from our perspective. Then also, youngest man to ever lead a Grand Prix, youngest man to ever set a fastest lap. Those kind of records don't mean a lot, but when you're in a team that isn't even the quickest car, that is impressive, isn't it?
It is. The Mercedes has looked in much better nick this year. I think the team has said it doesn't have the quirks and the downsides that it's had over the last few seasons. So it's made a real impression. It seems to be quite user-friendly, which is really, really good for a rookie driver. Props must also go to George Russell as well for doing a really good job leading the team, taking over from where Lewis Hamilton left off. Wasn't able to get ahead of Leclerc today in the race. Again, overtaking, tired deck, that sort of thing, just made it super difficult for everybody to make an overtake, really. And so Leclerc was able to stay ahead. But Mercedes, yeah, 5th and 6th, probably not the result it wanted. Probably could have been with a shout of a podium on a different day, but ultimately a good weekend.
Right, thank you everyone for watching over the course of the weekend. We're about to shoot off into the pouring rain in the Suzuka night. Join us next week when the team will be in Bahrain to bring you not as entertaining as videos of these, because we're not there, but they'll be good anyway.